Well, welcome back, everyone. Once again, if you would prefer to hear today's workshop in Korean, please select the globe at the bottom of your Zoom screen and click Korean language. I'd also like to invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us who you are, where you are, and your connection to Central. And today for this workshop on Will the Church Change? We are delighted to have back with us again, Reverend Dr. Sue Kim Park, who is ordained in the Presbyterian Church USA and currently serves as Director of Contextual Education and International Partnerships at Columbia Theological Seminary in Decatur. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Park today.
Thank you. It is noon here in Decatur. It's still morning over there, so good morning. I guess we're sort of all over the place today, right? Everywhere in the globe. So I am going to share, hopefully this works. Present, let's see. Screen 2. Share. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm not gonna put or have this screen like this the whole time. I do want this to be an interactive time together. So when the time comes, I want everyone to turn on their cameras. I am going to be upfront honest with you. It's a workshop, but I think it's a misnomer. I'm not going to give you any answers. I'm not here to present all of the information. And I certainly do not claim expertise in this field. So I want to continue our conversations and this narrative, this storytelling that you all have been participating in and hearing. I want our stories to continue. So this is just a phase of this storytelling and narrative that will continue in your own context. Change is the title of this time together. I want to present some theories to you. I want us to think about what is involved in change. If you were to bring change in your life or in your professional setting or in your ministry setting, what does it take? So those are some of the things that I want to talk about. And also I want us to hear from you the way you see change and the way you have experienced change. Change is something that we need, but it's so hard to make or to create or to accomplish, right? With this change, I want us to think about positive social change. And we'll get to what that social piece means. Positive change in our world is definitely needed. We can also parse out what that means. And I want us to engage in conversations. And of course, I want to talk about the church. There you go. I know that is there a chat that's been going on with who's who? I can't see because I'm sharing my screen. But I want us to introduce ourselves. I've been participating since Thursday, but I don't know who you are. I've been telling you my story, but I haven't heard anything from you. So I want to take this opportunity, 2 bullet points, real simple, just going around the room. I think we have, how many people do we have? 17, 16, 17? If we could just go around and introduce ourselves by giving us 2 bullet points about yourself. Not long-winded, just saying, and I'll give you an example. For me, the 2 things that I want you to know about me in this context, in this room, is that 1, I value community. I love community. I think that's where the power is. I think that's where sustenance for this world is. And we're designed and made to be in community. So my biggest thing in life and in theological education and in church is that we create community and we build community. And in that community, I believe in diversity, not just color, skin color, eye colors, but also difference in opinions. We can disagree, but still build community. with those differences in diversity, we create new and interesting cultures and new and interesting ways to live and interact with one another. Dr. Hertig talked about interdependence. There's a lot of interdependence in community and in diversity. Second thing I want you to know about myself is that I've kind of lived everywhere in the world. I lived in Korea, I lived in New York, I grew up in Florida. So I've just kind of been moving around every 3-4 years. The longest place I spent was in California, almost 6 years. And that was the last 6 years. So every 3-4 years, I've kind of moved around for whatever reason. So stability is something that I crave, but I never have. Community stability. Do you see the correlation here? Why I think community is important? So those two things are, 2 bullet point things that I want you to know about myself. But I took some time to talk about this, but if you can just go boom, boom, 2 things. Can we invite one another to do this so that we don't wait for someone to go? So I'm going to invite Jessica, since she is a friend of mine, to go.
Sure, sounds good. So 2 bullet points about myself. I'll build on something that you said, Sue, and I have also lived lots of places, only in the US. But by the time I was, I think, 25, I had lived in 7 different states. So I'm hoping Kansas might be the longest one that I live in. Second bullet point about myself is, let's see. Well, I'm just about 6 months pregnant with my.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So looking forward to having a daughter in the end of January.
That's so exciting. Will you invite someone?
Yes, sorry, thank you. I'll call on Carolyn. Good to see you, Carolyn.
Okay. So 2 points about me. I'm a former missionary to Japan, and creative care is a value that I hold. And I'll call on Robert Mulby.
Okay, thank you. 2 points about me. I'm a surviving spouse, and yesterday I got news from my grandson that I have a new great-granddaughter. That's the 2 important things in my life. And I guess the next point would be I'm constantly learning more about who I am, since I have now live alone and discovering a new identity. And that's, I guess that's the 2 points I would leave. I'll call on Dan Chadwick.
Thank you. I guess the things that I'd like you to know about me is, one is I'm still learning. I've been around a couple of different blocks, but I've never lived outside of the US, but I'm still learning. And the other one is that the other thing about me I'd like you to know is that I'm a dad of 3 incredible daughters. And one of whom is Jessica. So, I'm soon to be a granddad. So I'm kind of excited about that. And I'll call on Ruth Roselle.
Thank you. I apologize for being late on. I was having computer trouble. So I missed the instructions. Is it just 2 random things about ourselves, or?
2 bullet points about
2
yourself.
bullet points. Okay. I'm a missionary kid. I grew up in East Africa in Tanzania. So I look at a lot of things from perspectives that aren't necessarily situated in this country. And well, we're talking about children a lot, so I'm really enjoying our being with our only little grandson that is 20 months old. Oh, I will call on Angie.
Gosh, I've been trying to figure out what I might say if someone called on me. Thanks, Ruth. Let's see. I guess one thing I would say is I never imagined that I would end up at a minister in my life. I grew up in a very conservative tradition, and so I had no imagination for ministry as a female, and so so my life has turned out very different than what I might have imagined it as a young girl. And I will echo something that a couple others of you have said. I too have moved around a lot in my life. I think before I was 18, I had moved 12 different times, and I'm in my early 50s now, and I stopped counting. But I do know that I have been in Kansas since June of 2013, and that over the course of my life, that's the longest I have ever kind of lived in this tight of a geographic space. So let's see. I think I'll call on Pam.
Well, thank you, Angie. Recently, I took the Strength Finders test. So I'll give you two of my words from that. One is context. I am trained as a church historian, so my love of history and knowing the past and how things in the present are influenced by the past is so important to me. And I have to frame everything in, let me tell you a story from the past so we can talk about now. So that's one thing I think is important about me. The other thing that popped out on the Strengths Finder is individualization. And I've known this about myself for a long time. Individual stories matter, and approaching each person and their uniqueness and embracing each individual, to me, is often more important than the group dynamic. It's more, it's what drives me, is to know each person as an individual. So that's a little bit about me. Sonam, are you on camera? Can we see you and hear your two things? You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, President Daso. And I'm Saunam. I'm from Myanmar. I'm international student and alumni of CBTS, currently a second year PhD student at DU I Live Joint doctoral program. And that is one thing. And two thing is, now I live in Aurora, Colorado. And the second thing is my ministry. No one assigned me my ministry. I was a lecturer in my back country, but now here I'm a student. No one assigned me my ministry, but I accept my ministry is equal ministry. Ministry for equality, because I experienced a lot of inequality in my family in churches. Both of my parents are retired ministers. My dad, until now, give priority to milk. My mom want to say, but afraid to say about equality. I'm the voice of my mom, something like that. So I'm advocate for gender equality in ministry. Actually, I'm tired of. That's why I came in the US and retreat, and then, I learned to empower myself. Thank you.
Will you invite someone?
Yes, I would like to invite my friend and senior since we were in bachelor, BTH, my senior G1 from Myanmar.
Thank you, Salmon. Nice to see you all on Zoom. I'm Jiwon from Myanmar. I'm living in Yangon. One thing I want to let you know about me, I'm a DMIN. I got DMIN program degree from CBTS, alumni of CBTS. And right now I'm working in a church as a minister. My husband is a theologian and professor of Myanmar Institute of Theological Seminary. I have two sons, very, very nice and handsome two sons. I recovered COVID-19 diseases last 2 weeks, and I'm right now trying to be strong. Right now in our country, it's very difficult situation. So we have to struggle a lot, and we are not allowed to go outside. Very difficult to go outside because in our country, everywhere bombing and people are killed. So it is terrible time. So we try to stay at our house, in our house, and also we could not worship together at the church. That's why we worship through Zoom and through Facebook. Yeah. And what I would like to do in the future is I would like to empower women, because our country is a male-dominant culture. So women are very needs to be empowered to them. So that's all. Thank you. I would like to call upon Mr. Senkom Daigri. If she's not ready, I'd like to invite Mr. Gammo.
Hello, thank you. Nice to see you, everybody. So I would like to express two mentions. The first is I would like to introduce me. So I'm Gammo from Myanmar, Kachin State. And now I'm working in KBC, Kachin Baptist Convention, Director of Evangelism and Mission Department. I graduated 2018 at CBTS DMIN program, 2015 cohort DMIN program. And then, so one thing is tonight I would like to mention, so we need to do leadership style, change for leadership style. So for mission, for ministry, so now we are facing to crisis COVID-19 pandemic, and now we face to political crisis in our Myanmar. So we not gathering to in church. We are not gathering worship together in society or association in convention. So that is we need to change our leadership for mission or ministry. So now we can do online based ministry and mission. So we can share on Zoom meeting or Messenger, something like that. We can use today. So we need to change the leadership style for ministry and mission. That is very important for today currently situation. Thank you. That is just my mention.
Will you invite someone?
Okay. Dr. Jackson, Pastor Jackson, 2015 cohort from CBTS. I would like to invite Dr. Angel Jackson.
Since I had a turn already, how about if we call on Ursel? Has Ursel gone yet?
No. Yeah, Ursel Harrison in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Probably the first thing that's important and becomes more important every day is that I am a father, a grandfather, and a great-grandfather, and have the opportunity to have a 18-month-old great-grandchild in the home a couple of days a week. Second thing is related to change. As a person who is naturally oriented towards stability and consistency, I've probably had to do more change than I ever expected I would. And so that probably has made me a lifelong learner and attempt to continue to find ways to deal with the change that comes into my life. So I think those are both priority motivating factors for me at this point in my life. Let me call on Dr. John Park.
Hi, I'm John Park from Overland Park, Kansas. One bullet point about me is that I've been married to Sumi Park, kind of similar to Dr. Sue Kim Park, for 25 years. And we recently celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary. And at that time, it was I guess it was Tuesday. And so I wasn't able to actually do anything special. So that's why my wife and I decided to have a getaway beginning this coming Sunday, right after the service. We'll be heading out to a place where we're gonna spend some time together. And the other bullet point, I guess, about me is I am a student of leadership and followership. While I was doing English ministry at an ethnic church, I saw how pastors could actually get into an argument, but also have a fist fight, and which could involve, policemen and other ugly, mean things as well. That actually triggered great interest in the dynamics of leadership, but also I'm beginning to see the importance of followership more, as we are all followers with God, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Spirit as our leader. And also, I want to be able to be someone who wants to equip those who are vulnerable, those who are weaker members of society, which could include immigrants and women and orphans and other marginalized people. And I'd like to call on, let's see, Dr. Ingyun Woo.
He sent me a message and said that he was leaving, he was staying connected, but was going to be back in a little while. So he might not be here with us right now.
Then let's go to Rochelle.
Hello. I also was out during the instruction, but I think I kind of get just a couple of things. So I'm Rochelle Stroh. I'm down in Wichita, Kansas. I am a current Mako student. It's my first term. So I've just been in a handful of classes so far this year. I never anticipated going. Can't say never. I joked about going back to grad school. Wasn't like on the radar. I was a business owner, and then decided to close it last December. And yeah, just that joke became reality of, oh, if I ever go back to grad school, it'll be for counseling. And then that's what I'm actually doing. So I love it a lot. I'm really excited about it. Along with that, I love the Enneagram, and I plan on integrating that into my practice. I am a social 8-wing 7. So if you know me, that checks out a lot. And then I try to, and I'm at my healthiest if I do something creative every day. So I really try to I don't know, find something. I crochet a lot. So even as we do this, it helps me to pay attention if I'm keeping my hands busy. So I either do that or photography or watercolor or just something creative. And I feel really connected to the spirit when I do that. So that's why I really try to be intentional with it. I have no idea who has gone. So if you have not gone, I call on you.
I think maybe if Hyun Lee is with us and Young Lee Hertig, I think are two people that haven't gone, but I'm not sure if they're here.
I see a Lois Milks. Are you
She
here
is-
with us?
She is interpreting for us today.
Oh. All right then. I think everybody has gone, right? If you haven't, we'll get to know you in the next activity. I'm gonna try to share my screen again. There we go. So social change, I'm glad to hear where you are, what you're doing, and get to know where you are in life, right? I love that y'all are grandparents and parents. I have a 6-year-old and she's the only grandchild in the family. So I see the love grandparents have for their grandchildren and great grandchildren. We do have a great grandmother who is alive and she's like not even 5 feet tall. And the amount of love she has for my daughter is just beyond me. And how grandparents change when they become grandparents. My mom, super strict, like your typical Korean mother, turned into a mush when my daughter came around. She tells me all the time, don't make her cry, give her everything, buy her things. Growing up, I never heard that. Always like, you can't buy that. I can't. Strictest mother ever. But when you all become grandparents, something changes. And I want you to think about that. What changes in you when life events happen? So that's your personal change, right? But social change, what is social change? Change is something that happens culturally, something that happens with energy. It's directional. It is change. It is something that takes place to break patterns. I think it was Rochelle that talked about crocheting. Like when you're doing something and you want to change the pattern, what does it take? I don't crochet, I don't knit, I don't do anything with my hands. But if I were to create something, but change something within that creation, I have to shift, right? When I think about social change, we talked a lot about leadership change in this room. We talked a lot about cultural change. I heard a lot about cultural change. And all of us being learners, lifelong learners. It's a perfect laboratory to talk about change. It is a shift, a physical pivot. Even though cultural change is not a physical thing, I envision energy changing, shifting, pivoting, going in one direction, but doing something to turn around. Change doesn't have to be a U-turn, but it could be a slight shift in perspectives, right? You're looking at this dimension, but if you change a little bit, if you shift your position, you get to see different angles of people, things, and cultures. So I want, again, us to talk about what ways we've seen or experienced change in the last 2 years. A lot has happened in the last 2 years, right? Quite a bit has happened. Now think about what happened in the last 2 years. I want you to take about 5 minutes to go through this. We'll do this activity together. In the last 2 years, what changes took place in your life? One, we're going to start with personal. If you had grandchildren, great-grandchildren that were born in the pandemic, great. Personal changes that took place. They don't have to be major. I experienced major changes. I moved transatlantic, right, across the continent. But what are some changes that took place in your personal life? Major and minor. Then, once you're done with that list professional changes. Or I guess if you're not working or in your volunteer places, in your church places, in your community, what sort of structural professional changes took place? Once you're done with those two lists, I want you to go through your list and put P for positive and N for negative. I know we're working with this binary, but I'm going to force you into this binary. Positive versus negative. And I want us to share highlights. Not everybody has to share, but those that are inclined to share, I would like for us to share. I want to give you 5 minutes to do this. You can have your videos off. You can have your videos on. It doesn't matter. But take 5 minutes to do this activity. And then I'll call you back at about 4 minutes and 30 seconds. If you are around, please wrap up. You can't see the screen.
It says you're screen sharing. We could,
But there's no screen.
right. We could see it at the very beginning, but then after the sharing time, now we can't see it.
I'm going to see. Do you see anything?
No. Sorry. Do you want to email your presentation to me and I can screen share it?
I tried to share it from the website directly. Let me see if I can go to PowerPoint because I made this on Canva.
Okay. It worked earlier when you first started, but for some reason it's not working now.
Okay. How about this one? No.
No.
All right. This? No? Okay, so it's my computer. All right, then I will send it to you.
Great. I'll watch for it.
Yeah. Okay. Did you get it? All right. Let's start with slide 4. Yep. Okay, perfect. So I don't know if you've gotten very far with your list. If you could just highlight some of the changes that took place in your personal and professional. So start with the personal and then move into the professional for us. Would anyone like to go first?
Well, I moved across the country. I started a new job. Eventually my children came to live in Kansas, which was, if we're doing negative positive, that was a big positive for me. Some of the other changes, I now have no true like home church connection that I had back in Georgia. And I have been confined to space because of COVID, and that's been a big change for me. It's not to be able to travel and to meet people or to be out in more public spaces.
Mm-hmm. Any professional changes?
Well, I became president of a seminary in the last 2 years. That was kind of big.
In the pandemic?
During the pandemic, yes.
Anyone else?
Okay, I'll go next. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead, John.
You go. No, you go. You go ahead first.
Um, So I would say probably one of the biggest life changes that I have experienced thus far. I had opened a business when I was 25 and was a business owner through the pandemic. I owned a coffee shop locally. So very public business. And I closed it, as I said, in December. So at our 5-year. And I noticed as I was making the list, like, I think that would seem a very negative thing. It was definitely hard to go through. Like, it wasn't easy, especially sharing and knowing that it was affecting other people. But it was actually very positive. I had a lot of peace through it, and a lot of prayer went into it, and it was just right. So I think that's something that would be seen as negative, but was positive. I noticed that a lot on here. Yeah.
Okay. So for me, some of the personal changes are one, my wife is currently going through, menopause, and so that has affected me quite a lot. She also had a cold shoulder, so she had to go to Korea to get treated. Now she's back, feeling much better. I also have a new senior pastor in my church. And before we had the new senior pastor, I was kind of working part-time as English ministry pastor. But then as my work increased, I, told the church that I'm gonna step down to focus more on the schoolwork. But then the senior pastor, like only a few days later, told us that he is going to become the senior pastor of a mega church, like 15,000 member mega church. And I didn't think that the church could afford to lose 2 pastors all at the same time. And so I decided to stay and continue to serve. And even like preach one more time in the early morning prayer meetings. So I don't know if that somehow, I don't know, we'll see whether it's going to turn out, to be a great blessing in disguise. And on my professional side, I began serving as a faculty rep to the board, and something that I'm not doing a great job of. And then the other thing is I am also serving as a member of special committee alongside of our president, Dr. Pam Durso. One of the things that I continue to feel as, minority is that minor feelings, right? I'm the only Korean American or Asian on that committee. So I sometimes wonder whether I am, really contributing to the committee or the work that is going on. But I think that is one of the things that I've been doing. And also I am currently serving as a member of In Search of Excellence Advisory Board under the umbrella of ABHMS, which has been a joy. And so those are some of the things that I've been experiencing.
Quite a change in 2 years.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I'll just share in a general sense, kind of not the specific changes, but what I realized as I was writing things down is that it's really been a roller coaster of a couple of years, just like really high highs and really, really low lows.
How many experienced more personal changes than professional? More professional changes than personal?
So I wanted to share.
Sure.
So before 2 years, we can visit to the neighbors or visiting home in our situation. So now, last 2 years, between 2 years pandemic periods, we could not visit to neighbors and we could not visit to home. And that is thing is the group life to individual life to change. And so big group to small group. So big congregations, the gathering together worship to 2-3 family, only family gathering worship. That is the, in our Myanmar situation is change lifestyle. That is change life. Thank you.
Absolutely. That's a great segue into our next conversation. How did, the next slide, how did the pandemic push you and your context, your personal life, your professional life to change, right? Gam, is that your name? He just explained, because of the pandemic, we were forced to shift. We were forced to pivot, right? There are external forces. We were able to do this 2-year inventory rather easily without thinking too much about it because of this pandemic. It kind of pushed us into a direction. Whereas if we did it, let's say back in 2015, say between 2015 and 2017, what changes took place? It may not have been as major, right? So as an institution, I know we've got President Pam here, as an institution of a theological seminary in which I belong to, right? I belong to this theological education, or the church, the institution of church. Dr. Park talked about this church evolution. But Gam touched on that, and he and all other Burmese students and alumni are in this interesting space with the pandemic, COVID, and civil unrest, fighting for democracy, seeking safety. Those things intersect in an interesting way to lead those that are in these situations to change quite a bit abruptly, right? These changes come real fast. In 2020, March 2020, we had to pivot rather quickly. And we thought, oh, I don't know, personally, I thought, oh, maybe a month we'll be home. And 18 months later, here we are. We're still Zooming. So this was not a thing 2 years ago. But in 2021, Zoom is a part of our life. Being online like this is a part of our life. So what did the pandemic do to change our context? Other than being online, ecclesially, what have we changed? Feel free to talk, unmute and talk.
I think intentionality is a good representation of what has changed.
Say more. What about intentionality?
Intentionality of relationships, intentionality of, I guess I would say boldness. I think about an experience I very recently had of just having grace for others with different views, but also being willing to stand up for my own views and what my convictions are, specifically in the way of like vaccines and protection and care for others and the least of these. That's just been a really big kind of forward focus for me. And I chose not to hang out with a friend last week because I was getting ready to see my sister-in-law, who is finally pregnant again. She is a high-risk pregnancy. She's had numerous miscarriages, has gone through like IUI treatments, all of that. So this is like a big praise that she's pregnant. So we're not taking any risks. I'm also a high-risk individual, so I am very cautious with that. And just having that comfort to ask my friend, are you vaccinated? What precautions are you taking? I respect that, but I'm not going to spend time with you. And thankfully, this friend showed a lot of grace back and was like, agreed that she, even though with her beliefs, also didn't want to put anyone at risk. So super big respect on that aspect. But also with relationships, I think we have to be intentional with that, with who we're seeing, how we're seeing them, things like Zoom and things like FaceTime. I think about when I had to quarantine from an exposure and my best friend from Chicago was in town. We were supposed to hang out and we couldn't. And so she came and stood outside of my front door and we talked through my screen. So just great intentionality with that. Intentionality with how we view the world. When we needed to be safe, another friend and I took numerous day trips to just beautiful places to be in nature and to experience, but no one was at risk in what we were doing. And we have these memories and experiences to hold now. So I think it hits just about every area of life. And it moves into ministry with intentionality of how is the church reaching their community? How are we, helping the marginalized? How are we caring for the least of these, and showing that love through what I would see as protection and how we're handling the pandemic and that kind of thing.
How have you seen, not just Rochelle, but everyone, how have you seen the church respond to this new shift to care for the marginalized? Now the marginalized in this day and age is those that do not have access to technology, right? Elderly who may not be so tech savvy, who may not have the help they need to get on Zoom or YouTube to watch these services. The marginalized are those that are staying at home, can't go to school, but falling behind. Seeing my 6-year-old, I had to homeschool her when she was in kindergarten last year. I got her to read. That was the biggest accomplishment in my life. The PhD I have can't compete. Teaching a child to read is the biggest accomplishment. But I am a devoted mother. Those children without a mother at home or a father at home because they're busy working, right? Working 2-3 jobs to make ends meet. They're falling behind. Those are in the margin. But how have you seen the church respond?
Let me share a quick example. In our community, rather small church, a Cumberland Presbyterian church, probably a group you've never heard of, but husband and wife pastor team. And early last year, when students were having a hard time getting connections to do their work from school, online education, virtual education, they opened up the church building with its Wi-Fi capacity and found people in the congregation who are willing to work with kids. They could come and stay for like a morning or an afternoon, and they would work with the kids on getting their technology set up, any encouragement they needed for doing the work and having grandkids. I know that encouragement was certainly needed in a virtual setting, but this was a congregation. It's not a large congregation, but they were aware of the kids, especially in the neighborhood around them, who I would say were challenged digitally because of the household, and also with the family situation, with parents not being available to spend the kind of time with them they could. So that was a great example of a church adapting, opening up its space, and finding people within the congregation who would volunteer to do that.
That is a great story, right? That is an organization, but it only took a couple people to make that shift.
Yep.
And thank you for using that word adaptation. They adapted to the need, right? They transformed some of the space to meet the needs. Any other stories? I want to hear stories.
I attend a small neighborhood church in Wichita. It's called The District. And we it's in the middle of a fairly, in need neighborhood. We have our school district, or the schools in that area have the highest truancy in the city. And our pastor saw that parents of the elementary school across the street were at risk of losing their jobs due to having to stay home with their kids when everything was shut down. And so the church throughout the week turned into a learning center, and just I think maybe like half a dozen church members and community members would just be at the church all day with the kids, and they set them up in every possible room that we could. I think we have maybe 4 rooms total in that building. So like, but had the kids in every room, and we just kind of monitored them. But it was about like 3 weeks in December and then a few weeks in January before they were able to go back to school. And that allowed parents to be able to work still. And then the kids were still in school and being helped with that. We have Wi-Fi, so why not?
Yeah. The fact that we had Wi-Fi put us in the center, right? There were children who couldn't get on because they had no Wi-Fi. Any other stories?
I'd like to share a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The church that I attend, Sunset Hills Baptist Church in Omaha, Nebraska, has a men's group that met in person before the pandemic for their study. And then when the pandemic came, they learned to get on Zoom. We studied such books as Reading Romans Backwards by Scott McKnight and Evolution of the Word by Marcus Borg. Currently, we're looking at the leadership of churches that seems to be diminishing, and we're looking at a book. In fact, we've ordered it. It's called Empowering Laity, Engaging Leaders by Susan Gillies and Ingrid Devarnik. Anyway, we're not only thinking of ourselves, but we're also trying to open it up to churches in the American Baptist Churches of Nebraska and get other laymen to either form small groups studying this book or invite them to join with us as we meet every Tuesday night. One of our leading laymen in this moved away to Florida, and he still participates in the study. In fact, it's his encouragement that is inspiring us to try and open this up to a wider range, and hoping that it will help leadership and inspire leadership, not only in ourselves, but also in other churches in Nebraska. Make it wider than it is now, just within the 4 walls of our own building. I've been encouraged by the enthusiasm that has been shown by the men to try and do this. And I personally, since I'm an ordained minister, I kind of have to watch how I involve myself so that I'm not construed as interfering with other churches in their ministry. And we're looking at the American Baptist men as a possible way of doing this.
Thank you. It seems that because we are online and on Zoom, our church membership looks different.
It is.
Our members move away, but they're still part of the community. So our idea of community is evolving. I love personal interaction, in-person interactions, but so much is possible through Zoom. So Nam, I think you had you unmuted yourself. Did you want to share?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was trying to clarify what you just said. I don't hear too well either. So I'm sorry. What was the question?
Oh, no, there was no question. I was just commenting on how membership changed and how communities look different. because we're online. And now that you mentioned Hart, you can't hear all that well. Accessibility, right? That's a big issue in our churches. For those that may not be able to access everything that we have to offer. What do we do with those who can't really hear well, who can't see well, or who can't walk well, right? So thinking about this 360 idea of accommodating our members and those that are in our churches. But community is evolving, it's expanding. Gam, did you want to say something?
So I wanted to share about the story. So I can see the church changing is the now the church were facing the issue of the war problems. So the church activities changed. The church activity changed. Before 2 years, the church can quote that many work is the land teaching programs and social programs and then fellowship programs. That is something like this. The church could do many. So now, church will just social work, just for social work, and then church will do for the humanitarians and the protection, something like the pandemics and the contributions. That is the church will be changed, spiritual church to social church or the contribution humanitarian, something like that. That's I think I can see that church changing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally agree. But I don't think it's a shift or change. I think it's a change in the weight, right? I believe Dr. Hertig talked about seesaw at some point. The weight was on spirituality, right? The otherworldliness. But now church is meeting the needs of our concrete, tangible selves.
Yes.
So, but that work has always been there. It's just that we see it more evident. It's more clear because of the shift that we've seen globally. I need to go through these theories of change real quickly. This is the most boring part, but I'm going to give you this information so that you have it and you can take it to your context, your situation, whether you're in Myanmar or in Colorado or in Nebraska, and to your churches to strategize change. Social change requires strategy. So there are three theories of change that I want to bring to you, and these are similar. It's not rocket science, it's not neurosurgery, right? It's observation and analysis. So the first model I want to talk to you about is called the Lewin model. There are 3 stages: unfreeze, change, refreeze. I'm sure you can imagine what is involved in these things, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. The second model I want to talk to you today is planned change model. There are 7 steps to bring about and maintain change in an organization. And this has more to do with the changing agent than anything. The third model is Havelock phases of change. This one is similar to the steps of change, the plan change model, but the language this uses is more phase than steps. And I do not think that these models fit into every situation, and these steps are linear. They could happen in any combination, in any order, but I'll present these to you in this manner. So of the 3, or among the 3 models that I want to present to you today, there is a common thread. Next slide. The common thread is that the thing that brings change is a shift in energy. a shift in change or in direction, right? There are forces that drive an operation, right? I will send or actually Jessica has it. You can send these slides to everybody so you don't have to take notes. The forces that drive an operation must encounter something, an incident, an event, or some sort of pause to see that there are problems, that there are issues, something's not working. You have to feel discomfort with the status quo to change the direction. So the diagram is that the change is this triangle. There is driving force that wants this change to happen. And what are we going to do? We're going to resist change, right? So there's this resisting force, there's driving force. And at some point, this seesaw action, driving force will outweigh the resisting force and bring about this change. Let's talk a little bit about the Lewin model. This one, the unfreezing, is finding a method to let go of the old pattern. Whatever you're in right now, the situation you're in, how can you get your group, your colleagues, your coworkers to recognize and realize that there is an issue and let go of this old pattern and overcome resistance to change? It is our job that want change to convince others that, you know what, this isn't working. And that's where change begins, right? You persuade others that the status quo is not good. It's not beneficial. It's actually harmful. So let's do something different and find new and innovative ways to do what we've been doing. And then what do we have to do? We have to connect with the powerful. Who are the leaders? Like President Pam, like Jessica, like Dr. Park, right? Those that have power, go talk to them about the shift. And then you've got to talk to those that are around you to get on board with you. And then once that takes place, then you get to refreeze. I don't know if I like this model, but it gets, like, you get the point, right? There's got to be some sort of cultural shift, and it takes a lot of legwork on our part to do that. The next model, the plan change model, places a lot of that burden on you, the agent. You have to diagnose the problem. What do you see? Number two, you have to assess the motivation and capacity for change. Is there room for change? What is the motivation for change? And what are the resources for you to bring this change? Do you have enough resources? And what is the motivation for you? What's at stake? What do you have to lose? What do you gain at the end? And then you establish change objectives and strategies. Strategize, strategize, strategize. And I'm pretty sure your faculty, your senior pastors, wherever you are, and I'm sure President Pam has a lot of strategies. That's what they do all the time, right? You have to fundraise and you have to run a school. There's a lot of strategizing going on. Tap into those resources. Then determine the role of the changing agent. What are you going to do? What is your role in this big change? Are you going to organize community? Are you going to talk to everybody? Are you going to mobilize people you know? And how will you go talk to all the stakeholders? Maintain that change once it's somewhat in place. And then this is your goal, to terminate yourself from this change. You don't want to be in the change forever, right? This is agent, you are in and out. And you leave and empower others to maintain that change. The third model is called phases of change, similar to what we just talked about. You build relationships, you determine where the change is needed. This is like the diagnostic part, right? And then you diagnose the problem. You have to think, is the change warranted? Do we need this change? 3, acquiring resources. The need for change is understood. But the process of developing solutions begins with information gathering. Gather as much information possible. That is the biggest part, right? That's the most laborious part. And then you have to select the pathway for solution. This is the creativity part. You get to be creative. Like, what are the solutions for this particular problem, for this particular change? Now you accept the change, and there will be people that resist. So working with them, this is the interpersonal relationship part, right? We are humans, reach out to them as humans with feelings. I'm very task-oriented. So I've got colleagues and staff that remind me all the time, humans have feelings. You've got to see these people. They're people, not tasks. So if you're like me, please learn from me. You have to see the people. And then maintain the change, and at the same time, separate yourself from the change. Do you notice the pattern? How you have to separate yourself once it's done. It is not your accomplishment to claim, but it is the people's responsibility. You're empowering those around you as you collaborate with them to bring change. We can't do this alone. I can't do this alone, especially in an institution. The church is an institution. School is an institution. Wherever you are, your nation is an institution. How do you bring change in those situations? So these three are the theories. And next slide. Good luck, everybody. Just kidding. Next slide. So you fill in the blank, your context. This is your story. I'm about to leave you with lots of empowerment, but then I'm leaving, right? You're going to continue. So my last piece of support to you is this. Find those that are like-minded. Find those that are facing the same direction. And think, where are we now? What do you see in your church currently? And what do you hope to see your church or your community, your school, your group in the future? So here's who we are today. But again, I'm goal-oriented. Where's my goal? And then in the black part of this black and yellow, how do we get there? How do we get there? Not by myself. We talk about change, right? Change doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that I can do myself. My personal changes, sure. Institutional and professional changes, I can't bring that by myself. So who are your stakeholders? What's in it for you? How do you get to where you want to be? Find people that you love. Find people that love the job that you want to get done. Find people who share same passion and vision. And it's not difficult. Again, look at the person. Look at these humans that have feelings, that have passion, and that also have skills and talents. I can't crochet, but there's someone in this room that can. I love coffee, but there's someone in this room that knows a lot more about coffee than I do. Right? Like, there are great-grandparents in here. Jessica is about to have a baby. How can you make this world a better place? Looking at your experience for this new baby girl to come. All of that is in our hands. But it's a lot of work. So gear yourself up. right? Things are changing. The church is changing. But will it change is my question. Will the institution of church change? Someone talked about, what's the Presbyterian, Cumberland Presbyterian Church? I have heard of them, but the PCUSA is like this humongous organization that will not change. So what do we do? What do I do? One person. I get to organize. I get to organize, number one, seminarians who are going into PCUSA churches. I get to organize, number two, Korean American Presbyterian ministers that want to do Korean American ministry. And we collect our voices and we strategize. I don't know if we'll ever change our examination process, but we're working on it. We've definitely gone through some changes over the years, but in the last 2 years, we've gone through so much. So how do we build on this momentum and really push for what might serve our people? I want you to go away with this. In what ways can you start to change your context? Name at least one or two things as you go away from this workshop. 2 concrete ways to start that change. I think I'm over time. And I like to be punctual.
Thank you so much.
Any questions?
Yes, please.
Or comments? I want to hear you. I don't want to talk.
I just wanted to put in a little commercial because it relates exactly to this challenge that you're giving us to think about our context. And the commercial is for the Reshaping Church Thriving Congregations initiative at Central, which is basically a guided and intentional process to help congregations ask and answer some of these questions together that Dr. Park has posed to us. So I'll put a little link in the chat here, and it just gives some videos and some more information. Some of you have heard me talk about this a lot already, or have been part of this program, but it just relates so directly to the challenge that you're giving to us today. So I thank you for that.
One of the things that I've seen in my ministry working with churches is that, obviously we know the pandemic was pretty challenging and everything, and churches that just sat and waited until they could do what they had done before are at least from what I've observed, are the churches that are declining and probably will not last in another 10 years. And I think that's partially because they should have been changing 10 to 15 to 20 years ago, but they refused to change then. So when these hard things hit, now they just don't have the resources to even change. They don't have enough people. They don't have enough of anything to change. And so they won't exist in another 10 years.
Yeah, it's timing, right? But how do we sense that timing? Like, why were they so stubborn?
It's that willingness to change even when, and I think, and we don't want to, because to change we have to give up some of what we like.
Yes.
I think there's a sense of fear and also lament, like when you have to let go of certain things that you have been so holding on to so dearly. There's that sadness, there's that sorrow that you have to deal with. We can just dismiss that kind of those feelings. And also one other thing that comes to my mind is the role of the Holy Spirit, who is actually moving and doing wonderful things. And how are the churches responding to this leading of the Holy Spirit? We see new fresh expressions of the churches, and we also see missional church movement on the rise. I think those are some of the things that we could definitely consider trying. and also how we could collaborate, not only as individuals, but also as churches. As you mentioned, there are churches with a lot of resources. There are churches that do not have resources. How can we come together? I think this digital world has made it a lot easier for these kinds of churches to come together and really work together.
Yeah, and if we were a little less fearful of the boundaries, right? I think I heard you talk about, Dr. Park, how collaborating with other churches is kind of sensitive because you don't want them to think that you're stealing members away from them, but that should not cross our mind, right? We're in our own context and we're worshiping. So the fact that we are afraid shows a lot about how secure and insecure we are, right? So if we could manage those fears, I don't think we can ever get rid of those fears, but manage it to a point where we could work together and collaborate together. That sounds ideal to me.
One of the things that we talk a little bit about in the Reshaping Church process is that that we hope that leading congregations through this process of intentional change is kind of a muscle that they learn how to exercise. And so I think this relates back to kind of this question of why some of the churches were unwilling to change previously. It's a practice, right? And so kind of exercising that muscle and continuing to practice it helps us to be prepared to practice it and when we're forced to change.
Right. It's training ourselves. Great point. I believe you have something coming up. So I don't want to take away from your bathroom breaks and coffee breaks, but it was an honor to share this space with you. And thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you so much, Dr. Park. Very grateful for you. Thank you for our translation today too. Very grateful to have that opportunity to have these wise words and stories translated to Korean. And thanks always to Rochelle for helping with all of our tech needs. So we do have a break now. In the middle of the US, it's lunchtime. In your part of the world, it might be time for a different kind of break, but we will meet back together at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. So in about an hour for our next workshop with Shachin Caps, which is called Show Me the Money, the art and science of nonprofit fundraising. And I think Shachin is going to give us a lot of helpful and useful tips for, and nonprofit fundraising is not just for nonprofits, but this is an element of stewardship as well. So I think that it will be a very helpful workshop. So thank you so much, Dr. Park, for leading us in this conversation today about change. Very grateful for you, and hope everyone has a good break here now. You're welcome to